Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Growth Lab podcast. I'm here to help you move and feel confident in your body so you can engage with all the opportunities that life has to offer. And I want to talk today about exercise for people that hate exercise, because I don't always love to exercise, but I still do it anyways. A lot of my clients who I see don't love exercise, but they come in and guess what? They now like it. And that's possible for you as well. So we're going to talk about a whole bunch of different tools today that are going to help you learn to enjoy exercise, help you get started on exercise. We're going to talk about the dark forest. We're going to talk about how to chunk out exercise if you don't love doing a whole bunch at one time. We're going to talk a little bit about goal setting. There's going to be some neuroscience here. It's going to be a real fun one. I'm really excited for it. So let's go and let's take this journey together. So the first place we're going to start today is a conversation about framing, specifically how do we see exercise? Because I think for a lot of people, and I can say this is true for myself as well, when we think about exercise, it occurs as this hard thing that can be overwhelming. It might be overwhelming because you have pain and discomfort in your body and you don't want to hurt yourself further and you're not sure where to start. Or it could be one of those things where the idea of moving and exercise is something that you've never done and perhaps it's scary because you're not sure where to start or what to do. Absolutely all valid reasons. The reason I want to share this framing conversation first and foremost is because if we can perhaps change even just a little bit the way you're seeing or thinking about exercise, it could make it a whole bunch easier to start or get into exercise with some of these tools. So the first thing I'm going to put out there is when it comes to the enjoyment of exercise, there are some people that are just wired kinesthetically that they love moving. And they usually become pro athletes or they love getting up in the morning, going for a run. That's great for them. That ain't me. And it probably isn't you either, because if it was, you probably would not be listening to this podcast. So we've got to think about some other ways to think about this thing. One of the ways I think about exercise is this idea of the carrot and the stick. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the term, the carrot and the stick essentially says, if you've got a horse and you want them to move and go faster, you can either give them the stick, which is a negative stimulus because it's painful because you're hitting them in the rear end, or you can dangle a carrot in front of them and have them try to move forward to eat the carrot. So the carrot is like a good positive thing and the stick is a negative thing. And what we know from neuroscience is that we can actually use both framings of exercise is good and I enjoy doing it and I want to go, and also exercise something I don't love doing as a way to actually get us motivated and inspired to go to the gym. So if you're having a morning where you're looking forward to exercise and you want to go and you're on your way there and you're like, this is going to be amazing, I'm so looking forward to this. This is a great time to think about all the benefits that exercise gets for you. Happier, healthier heart. Maybe it's the endorphin rush that you get, or that sensation after you work out where you feel really, really accomplished. Or you think about what'll be possible for you as you get stronger, maybe playing with your grandkids, or you'll have a more aesthetically pleasing body, or whatever that thing is for you. This is a great time to increase motivation, increase your inspiration further by thinking about the good things it gets you. And on the flip side of that, where I imagine a lot of people are, is this idea that I don't want to go to the gym. I have to get up earlier. I got to get in my car. It's cold this time of year. I got to go there and exert myself. And the body has this natural disposition of being an energy conservation machine. So we don't necessarily like that feeling for a lot of people. At this point in time, it's a good thing to actually use fear as a motivator. Believe it or not, this is all backed up by neuroscience. If you think about the consequences of what happens if you don't exercise, and the worst case scenario, even just for a minute or two, that has actually been shown to motivate people and give them inspiration when they're in this state. So for me, when I don't want to exercise, I'm like, I don't want to go on the treadmill today. This is so boring. I think to myself, well, what happens if I don't exercise? Well, 20 or 30 years from now, I slow down because of the aging process in the body. I'm not going to be able to have as much energy. And I like having energy. So I think about that. And that motivates me then to be on the treadmill or be on the Stairmaster and actually get what I need to get done. I don't want to go to yoga class today, but what happens if I tighten up? What happens if my balance starts going? What happens if I have to start living in a home? I don't want that. Time to go to yoga. So we can think about this idea of the carrot and the stick and framing of excitement and fear and really diving into the consequences of what happens if we do or do not go as a way to continue building motivation by triggering some of these different neural circuits in the brain. It's really, really cool stuff. Now, I love this concept. It's one of my favorite things. And I actually use this idea when I work with some students in a business coaching consulting program that I run with one of my colleagues. I shouldn't say I run with one of my colleagues. He runs it. It's his program, and I'm a coach in the program. And we coach other personal trainers on how to build their business. And just like how there are people who they really want to go to the gym and they really want to exercise, but this can't seem to get started, or just the idea of going to the gym just seems like, ugh, like I don't want to do that, like daunting or overwhelming. There is this idea of the dark forest, this analogy, this metaphor I use, and it's that there might be this utopia, this beautiful landscape with warm waterfalls that you can swim in, some of the most gorgeous landscapes and trees that you've ever seen. And there's plants and bushes that bear this delicious fruit, and you can have all of that. But in order to get there, you first have to walk through 5 minutes of a dark, scary forest. Nothing's going to happen to you in this dark, scary forest. You might just feel a bit of fear, some other negative emotions, some resistance. But once you get through that first 5 minutes of walking through the dark forest, you get through this beautiful utopian landscape with all this other stuff. Now, is it worth going through that 5 minutes to get to that utopian landscape? Absolutely. We want to do that. There's nothing there. It's almost like guaranteed promise of bounty when we go through that dark forest to this beautiful land. And I would put it to you, it's the same thing with exercise, or really any activity that we're feeling resistance to getting started with at the very beginning. In that, if we go through the first 5 minutes of this uncomfortable, I don't want to do it state, our body actually gets into the flow of doing the thing and it becomes easier. And you can probably pick out any number of different experiences in your life where you know this to be true. I know this for myself. There are times where I don't want to record this podcast, but I know if I get through the first 5 minutes of the planning process and then I turn all my equipment on, then I'm going to be doing it and I'll just be in the flow of things. And that's what happened this morning. It's 7:39 a.m. here where I am, and I turned all my stuff on at 7:15. I'm like, I don't really want to do this today. I want to do some reading. But I said, no, I'm going to just start planning. I'm going to take it from there. And it happened. So I'd put it to you that if you're feeling resistance, getting started in the exercise process, getting to the gym that day or to yoga, whatever that is, just get your stuff, get in your car and drive there. Because the second you get in your car and you're already 5 minutes out, good luck. You're already there. You're going to do it. You've already invested too much time to turn around. So I'd use this idea of the dark forest leading into the beautiful landscape as this metaphor of getting yourself into the flow state and just faking till you make it for 5 minutes. And then you'll find the beauty of just being able to do the thing almost seamlessly happens almost right afterwards. It's absolutely beautiful. The last part of the framework I want to share with you is don't be a someday person. And I think we all know people like this with like, someday I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to pursue my career. Someday I'm going to do this. Someday I'm going to do that. I don't want you to be 70 and feel like your body's not doing what it needs to do and then feel sad and depressed about it. Or 50 or 40 or 30 or even 20. The beautiful thing about exercise is it's never too late to start. The body is a neurodynamic, plastic machine that is ready to change on a moment's notice if you give it the right stimulus and input. And so don't be a someday person. Let's start taking some action now so we can start moving and exercising. Oh my God, that was embarrassing. I'm sorry about that burp. Sorry about that, everybody. Don't be a someday person. Start today, do small little bits, and you'll feel better. And we'll get to small little bits and talking about that in the action steps coming on later in this podcast. Moving forward from here, let's talk a little bit about goal setting. And I'll be honest with you, I have a bit of an aversion to goal setting myself. I don't really like the idea of goal setting per se. To me, sometimes it feels like cheesy and something the corporate world has told me I have to do. But the reality is that if done correctly, goal setting does work, and there's tons of information to back this up. And the process doesn't have to be long and arduous and take hours. It can actually be quite simple. I'm going to share with you like a really simple goal setting framework that I use for myself and I've shared with other people in the past. And I think it might have some real benefits for you as well. And it does rely on the backbone, you might have heard this before, of SMART goals. SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Any goal you set should be on the backbone of those different things. And the way I break it down, my goal setting, especially when it comes to exercise, is I take that SMART process, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, and I just try to put it into one longer sentence, and I just try to block it out into a 6-week period. So what I would suggest for you is, if you have a hard time exercising and you really want to get into it, you sit down and you first think to yourself, okay, what is a realistic amount of time I can dedicate to this and not fall off the wagon? Because one of the things that a lot of people do, and it violates that idea of it being like realistic, is they say, I'm gonna go to the gym 6 days a week for an hour each day for the next, whatever, infinity. They don't even put a good timeline on it. And what ends up happening is they might go day 1 and day 2, and then they miss day 3 and they beat themselves up. And then they have a negative emotion about it. They feel like a failure and they just end up stopping, or they're great for 2 weeks and then they stop because it's too much. We have to be kind of realistic with this thing here. So with all that in mind, instead of going through all the little different pieces, what every acronym means and how to use it, because that's beyond the scope of what you need to know right now. Let's make it quick and dirty and give you some actionable steps. What I would do is I would take the days that you're going to work out, the time of the day you're going to work out, what you're going to do when you work out, the duration of those workouts, and then put a by when or an end date on how long this is going to go for, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. And you use that as your basic goal setting framework. So what it might look like is, for the days, I'm going to go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The time, I'm going to go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. The action, I'm going to go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. I'm not sure if those are the times, but you get what I'm saying. Between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. And I'm going to do 30 minutes of machines and resistance training and 15 minutes on the treadmill, right? And that's also actually the duration piece as well, which comes next, which is the 30 minutes on the resistance training and the 15 minutes on the treadmill. And then the by when is how long you're going to do it for. I'm going to do this for 8 weeks until February 21st, 2024. I don't know if that's 8 weeks from today's date. I'm just guessing, right? But if you put it all together, you do get a specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely goal. I'm going to go to the gym on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., whereas I will do 30 minutes of resistance training on machines, 15 minutes of cardio for 8 weeks until February 21st, 2023. And now you've got a very specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely goal. You know when you're going to go to the gym, what you're going to do, how long they're going to be. And because it's also specific and measurable and all that other stuff, your neural circuits can really get to work on it in your subconscious background. And there's a whole bunch of other different tools and techniques and tips you can use in terms of goal setting, right? Some people do the whole thing where they write it on like a sticky note and they post it on their fridge and they just leave it there. That doesn't really work because our neural visual system and our brain actually gets used to seeing it every day. The better thing to do would be to wake up, rewrite that down every day in a different color pen or a different font or a different size, post it in a slightly different place so you always see it so it stays top of mind. It's one of the things that you can do. But from here, when it comes to the goal setting, and this is now where we're going to get into some of the action steps, like a nice smooth transition here, we want to think about, okay, what's going to perhaps get in the way of me getting this done? Do you have kids that require attention in the morning? Okay, great. How do you enroll your husband in order for you to be able to do this? Or maybe the morning's not the best time for you. Maybe you have to go on your lunch hour. So now you have to go find a gym that's close to your workplace that you can get to and from on your work break. Or do you have to change the duration of your workouts from 45 minutes to 30 because you have an hour lunch and it takes 10 minutes to get there, a few minutes to change, half an hour to work out, right? 5 more minutes to change, 10 more minutes to get back to work, whatever that might be. But now you start thinking about, okay, what obstacles might get in the way here and how am I going to address these, right? If it's one of those things where, you're a hard self-starter, kind of like I had mentioned before, where it's like, oh, that dark forest is there and I don't really want to go through it, then you got to figure out how to remove some barriers. Maybe it looks like you always have your gym clothes and gym shoes and everything packed in your car. So it's not like I have to do that every day, but it's just there and ready for you to go when you don't feel like going. It's just one more thing that you don't have to worry about in order to get to the gym. So these things are going to happen, and you have to be able, obviously, to pivot, right? That's what goals are for, is to give you some direction, but understand that, okay, there's going to be some pivoting that has to be involved here. And another way of putting everything I just said is thinking about this like from a systematic perspective, a system. Students who I coach in that program I told you about, they hate when I say this now because it's redundant at times, but it's so true. System stands for save yourself some time, energy, and money. And if you're having a hard time making it to the gym, or you're having a hard time being consistent, you got to think of what's not working in your system. Is it that my gym's too far away? Is this at a bad time for me? Is it I'm asking too much of my body? Is it that I don't know what I'm going to be doing in the gym? Okay, well, what in this system of me getting up, going to the gym, exercising, showering, coming back home at these certain times, what's not working in that system? And now how am I going to pivot away from that? So think about this from a systematic perspective as well. So we've got a little bit on goal setting there. And we talked a little bit about getting to this action piece of, okay, systematize it a bit, remove all the obstacles, figure out the flow. There's a couple other things I'm going to suggest to you if you don't like exercise, I think are really going to help. One is there's this ideal of what you ought to be doing that's going to be best for your health. And in a world where we could collect every single piece of data, know every single piece of tissue quality, the health of your knees, the health of your back, your shoulders, your heart, like know how every cell in your body's essentially processing and how healthy it is. And then we could, with that data, reverse engineer and work backwards and figure out exactly what you need to do. That'd be the best thing. But what I found from coaching people over and over again is that there is the best thing in the world that's going to be perfect for you. And then there is you as a human being with your emotions, your preferences, your history, your likes, your dislikes. And often those two things, right? You can't see it right now if you're just listening, but I'm pushing in my fists together like they're running into each other. Those are also juxtaposed to each other often. They're not in sync with each other. And we have to figure out ways often to find the middle ground. I know I have to exercise on one side. I don't like to do it on this other side here. How do we perhaps find the middle ground between these two things? And while I'm a big proponent and believer in resistance training and cardiovascular activity, because when you are looking at resistance training, you can really get, in my opinion, the strength of the lowest common denominator joints, the ones that are holding you back the most stronger in a very effective and tailored way. Through resistance training, that to me is a huge return on investment. It's a huge ROI. If we find the exact thing that you need at that time, that's gigantic. However, that thing might not be what you love to do. And so I'd put it to you that one of the best things that you can do, if it's really, really hard to start and you really don't like exercise, just freaking find something that you can do that you enjoy somewhat and that really doesn't cause you pain or discomfort. And when I say pain or discomfort, I mean like achiness, sharp dullness, that kind of thing. Not like discomfort, like, I don't like walking on the treadmill, or I don't like the Stairmaster. Like I'm less concerned about that and more concerned about physical sensations rather than psychosomatic sensations in that regard. But do something that you like. Maybe resistance training would be the best thing for you. But if you really like yoga, and like bonus, this would be the next point. There's friends that you know that also like yoga. Go do some yoga right now. Going from doing nothing to doing something that actually feels good and doesn't leave you in a place where your body is like painful in a bad way is a really positive thing. So if it's just like going out for like a 15 or 20 minute walk with your neighbor in the morning, that's fantastic. I think that's wonderful. I think it's absolutely tremendous. One of the first things I did with my wife, because she wanted to get back into going to the gym, is like we went together and I gave her a little bit of insight on what to do when she was there. But just like us going together and like the enjoyable car ride there helped her just to get back into this working out kind of groove. And I'm really proud of her for it. And she just does her own thing now, which is great. But that kind of doing it with a friend and then doing something you like goes a really, really long way. I'm going to share one last point here when it comes to the action pieces. And there's something really powerful about doing it because you don't want to. I attended a lecture recently in Toronto from a gentleman who has one of the most popular neuroscience podcasts. on Spotify and in the world right now. His name is Dr. Andrew Huberman. It's called the Huberman Lab Podcast. And he did a lecture in Toronto, and he was showing just a whole bunch of information he's never really shared before, and some information that he has shared before. And one of the things that he was talking about was building resilience. How do we build resilience in the body? How do we build more willpower, so to speak? And it seems like one of the best ways to build willpower is doing things that you don't want to do and knowing that you don't want to do them, but doing them anyways. And what this essentially does is it builds up that mental muscle of being able to do things that you dislike. Now, I'll be honest with you. There are tons of things that I dislike doing, but I'm trying to get better and doing them. One example on a physical note is cold baths. Cold baths are one of these things that most people don't love doing. And even if you learn to like doing it like I do, your body still at a physiological level fights it. So like I get in the ice bath and I look forward to it because I know it's good for me. But when I get in there and that water is 5 to 10 degrees Celsius and it feels freezing and I want to get out of there, I still stay in there. Even though I know it's a positive benefit mentally, physiologically, my body hates doing it. But it builds resilience and it builds the ability for me to use that resilience in more other different things. So I'd put it to you that if you don't like exercising and you don't really want to do it and it's not something you're a fan of, going and doing it anyways will build a lot of character and a lot of resilience in your body. And over time, your body will learn to like exercise because it is a beneficial thing that feels good for you. And then you'll also learn within exercise sessions to push things that you don't necessarily like to push. I don't like being on the treadmill. I want to get off there as soon as I can. The first time I did it, was on there for 10 minutes a year ago, and then I moved to 15 minutes and now 20 minutes. And like, I still don't like being on there, but I can do it for longer and it's good for me. And I've kind of developed that muscle. And it translates into, by the way, it builds a general resilience in your life, not just for exercise or that thing. It builds like a general resilience for everything else in life. I think it's one of the reasons why parents are some of the strongest people in the world, is because having a kid is something you have to take care of, and you will oftentimes every day, from what I understand at least, not want to do that. But you have to have the resilience to keep pushing forward and keep doing it. I think that's absolutely beautiful. So as a recap for today's episode of the podcast, we talked about framing here. We talked a little bit about the carrot and the stick, how to use excitement and fear in order to motivate yourself. We talked about the idea of the dark forest and pushing through the first 5 minutes that we don't want to do to get to that flow state. We talked about not having case of some days. We're being someone that continues to push off their health and wellness over and over again until they get to a point where they just don't feel good in their body. And it's starting to really cause them quality of life losses. We talked a little bit about goal setting, these SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And to set it up in one long sentence where it's, here are the days I'm going, here are the times I'm going to go during the day, here's what I'm going to do while I'm there, and for how long I'm going to do it, and setting a by when, the due date, which is the final date that block of goal setting is going to end by 8 weeks from now on February 21st, 2024. From an action perspective, we've talked about removing obstacles and setting up systems to ensure your success and be able to pivot along the way. We talked about doing something you like is better than doing nothing. And then doing it with a friend and having that social contagion also helps to move you into action. And then also doing it because you don't want to help you build resilience in your character as well. And one last thing I'll add in there, and I forgot about this, is chunk it. If you work out from home, and you don't want to do 30 minutes, just do 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes here, and then you'll get your 30 minutes. And research shows that exercise and its positive effects are cumulative rather than having it be about doing it all at one time in duration. So I could exercise 10 times a day for 5 minutes, or I could exercise once a day for 15 minutes. I'd still get the same amount of benefits. That's everything for this podcast. For exercising, for people that don't like exercise, I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast and give me some feedback. Let me know about things you'd like to see in the future down below, and I'll see you on the next one, all right? This has been The Growth Lab. My name is Glen Owen. Let's honor our bodies. Let's feel confident. Let's move and exercise and feel amazing, because we've got one life to live, and we ought to be able to take care of all the opportunities it presents us. Take care.